last guest of the day. There he is, Michael Chandler, June 29th.
What's up, Ariel?
Headliner. How are you, sir?
73 days, but who's counting?
Wow.
73 days.
70. That is amazing. That is nothing, by the way. That is a quick turnaround from the time it's announced to the time the fight happens, right?
It's really not, I mean, I found out, I've known for months, obviously, that we've been targeting June 29th. I haven't really talked much about it. And obviously we've had it inked for a little while, and just kept my little mouth shut and kept training, kept my head down. And then, I knew they were going to announce it after. And the way that Dana White announced the biggest fight of the last decade, possibly, with Conor coming back and all that stuff, was on a piece of paper. So,
yes.
Man, it was pretty funny.
Okay, so you say funny. Okay, I did like a 1 hour glowing, like I was showering the UFC and Dana White with praise. Everyone says, oh, you don't. The top of my show on Monday was me just saying that was the greatest ever, and they nailed it. And I said, can I offer one critique, one small critique? I think the return of Conor McGregor against you, a fight that we've been talking about deserves a little bit more than a piece of paper, deserves a promo on the ESPN broadcast, on ABC, on the pay-per-view, something. You weren't bothered by this? You didn't think that it needed a little bit more of an oomph?
I actually thought it was a baller move, honestly. I think, because we've had it done, if they wanted to do that, they would have.
Yeah.
I think something like that on the UFC 300 broadcast would take away from UFC 300, right? All of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, forget, halfway through the card, forget the next couple fights. Everybody starts talking about, the big fight that everyone's been doing, and I think Dana's pretty romantic and nostalgic about what he has built, and he built up UFC 300 to be the greatest card, and it delivered. And honestly, I'm glad they didn't, man. Let those guys and gals have their shine. Let UFC 300 be its thing. And what you realize, too, about the UFC, as big as they are, too, that doesn't mean everything needs to be bigger and bigger. Sometimes simple is just it's sweet. It was funny. It was cool. And I knew it was coming. I was watching the post-fight press conference. I was about to do an appearance, and all of a sudden the piece of paper came in, and I'm like, this has got to be it. And I never once had the thought like, oh, man, I want a big promo, or I want flashing lights and stuff. Man, a fight's a fight, and obviously it's a huge fight. And I think the way that they did it was kind of baller, because it was the exact opposite of what you and everyone else expected.
Okay, fair enough. Could I ask, when did you sign?
A couple weeks ago.
Okay. And so once that happened, did you know that he had already signed too?
Well, I was expecting one guy is notorious for, and then one guy's like, yeah, give me the contract, I'm going to sign it. And that's not just the Conor fight. That was Dan Hooker and my beginning of my UFC run all the way through. It's like, give me the opponent, give me the date, give me the contract, check the numbers, check everything. We're good. Sign it. Done. Get to work. So yeah, I knew Conor had already signed it because obviously they're going to go through him first, or go to him first, and then I'm going to sign it. So I signed it.
Was 185 ever discussed?
It was discussed, but obviously it didn't really make sense. It's one of those things where I love it. I love that the fight's at 170. I love that it's 5 rounds. I love the prospect of it being at 185. To me, 185, 170, 155, it's the exact same training camp. I just get to eat a little bit. I would have ate a little bit more at 185 and a little bit more at 170. But I was cool with 185. But obviously 170 is perfect. So 170 is a great weight class for me.
And just curious, was 155 ever discussed?
Not really. I mean, once Conor has been talking about the bigger weight classes now for years, right? Obviously, I can make 155. I don't like to make 155. It's going to be tough for me to even make 155 unless I'm fighting for a belt, a BMF belt, or the lightweight title belt at this point. But, I think 170 is perfect. 170 is enough to keep us both disciplined enough through a training camp, and it's going to be a little bit of a cut.
I spoke to Conor about a month ago. And one thing that was interesting about it was he pretty much said, I got the call, I'm good to go, all that stuff. But he did kind of make the case for liking the idea of it being a 3-round main event. And I was wondering what you thought of that and if that was ever discussed. It's a very, I mean, it never happens anymore unless it's a fight that was put together on like 5 days' notice. And so what did you make of him throwing that out? And was that ever something that was brought to your attention?
Yeah, it was very interesting. When I heard it, I think I saw the clips later on. I like 5 rounds. I like the idea of 5 rounds. I like the idea of the training camp you have to put in for 5 rounds. I like the idea of the immense amount of the road in front of you, the toil in front of you for a 5-round fight when you step inside of the octagon. One of us wants it and one of us didn't. So that's a good indicator of who's ready to go to battle. So I'm excited about it. I'm glad it's 5 rounds. And, I think it was more discussed on his side more than it was on my side.
Does that give you any insight into where he's at? The fact that he's asking for, like, do you say to yourself, like, okay, he doesn't have the cardio, he doesn't have the gas tank, he's looking for, something a little lesser than your typical UFC main event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've gone on record many, many times and said, respect to Conor. He could come back and fight anybody, and I'm a tough fight. I'm a tough fighter, a durable guy, fight hard, dangerous guy. There's a lot easier fights he could have taken besides me coming back from this injury. So I give him the respect there. But no, I mean, I don't know where his head was at on the 3-round thing. I mean, conventional wisdom would say obviously it's easier to fight a 3-round fight than it is a 5-round fight. But what does it matter if you plan on going out there and knocking a guy out? What's it really matter, man? The time doesn't matter because I don't expect to see the 5th round bell or even a 3rd round bell. So it's interesting, man, and it's a bad look. So it's a good look for me.
By the way, did you see Roadhouse?
I've not seen Roadhouse yet.
Are you interested in seeing it?
I am. Yeah, I don't know why I haven't yet. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to watch it when I was at my house. My wife was like, I don't want to watch it. That's pretty much the only time we watch TV. We like lay down and watch TV and choose something to fall asleep to. But no, I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I mean, I've heard it's done great. Obviously, that makes me happy. It's going to do nothing but increase the pay-per-view numbers, increase the eyeballs on Conor's comeback. What he has built is massive. So it's cool. And I'm excited to train for this thing.
Okay, and so speaking of lying down and you have a moment of peace with your wife, did you ever have a moment in all of this where you're lying down, you're just reflecting, and you look to her and say, I don't know if this is ever going to happen? Did you ever doubt for a moment that all of this would be for naught?
Absolutely. There was times. I think overall the general sentiment, because there's so much more reassurances behind the scenes than are front facing to the media, to the fans, insiders, inside information, all that kind of stuff. And it was chaotic. There was a lot of chaos going on, man. I mean, take you back to Conor calling out basically every single person on every single card for a couple months straight there. Justin winning the BMF belt, calling out all these different guys. And Diaz was kind of throwing his name in the mix, and then UFC 300 and the time, or the whole USADA thing up and down, and then the fight date getting pushed back. And obviously, yeah, man, I'm a human being. You can have unwavering faith. You can have great confident expectancy. You can expect great things to happen. You can build yourself up and do the right things for the right thing, the good things and blessings to be bestowed upon you. But it doesn't mean that you can't be so naive or so uneducated throughout life to know that bad things are going to happen. Like doors might get closed, right? So I have my moments, of course. But overall, I stayed in the gym. All I did was try to focus on what I can control, man. When everything is taken away from you from a control standpoint, even though you're doing what you need to be doing, even though you're making the right decision, even though everyone is criticizing you and pointing the finger at you, I stayed steadfast. I stayed immovable. The little bit of time off was good. I looked at it from that perspective, man. I spent more time with my wife and boys in the last 15 months that I have Hap's entire life and Ace's entire life. My wife and I's entire marriage. We'll be married 10 years this September. My body needed a little bit of time to heal up. There were so many blessings. On the business standpoint, I'm crushing it in business. So there was a lot of blessings in there, and I could count those blessings, even though my flesh, my human, every now and then was like, dang, dude, you're going to look like a big idiot if this thing doesn't happen. And that's the ego talking, and ego is the enemy. And luckily here we are.
And sometimes the UFC is in a pinch. They need something they put. Did they ever try to convince you to take another fight? We need you for this one. We need you to headline this. We need you to do. Was there any offers thrown your way that you had to decline?
Never, man. And it's bad business. It's bad business for me to be sitting on the shelf. You know, if you look at the UFC from a business standpoint, it's bad business for one of the most exciting guys on the roster, if not the most exciting guy on the roster, to be sitting on the sidelines this long. Really bad business. And these are smart businessmen. You got to remember too, man, what did we just have this past weekend, man? Gaethje got booked. Gaethje's been booked twice, right? Or Poirier got booked twice. Armin, Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, all of these guys, I was all in the rankings with all of these guys, never once got a phone call. Now, if I would have called the UFC, said, forget it, I'm done waiting on Conor, they would have put something together. Absolutely. Chandler, we're going to put you on the next big card because you're one of the guys who can sell a pay-per-view. We need you on some pay-per-views. So that was one of the big things for me as well, man. It's bad business knowing that I was sitting out, and the UFC, if the UFC didn't have a plan and they didn't have confidence that this thing was going to happen, maybe it didn't happen in September like we wanted, or December, or then January, then UFC 300. Maybe it wasn't going to happen on the timeline that we wanted, they wanted, maybe even Conor wanted. But obviously here we are. And now the waiting felt so long in the moment, and now we are so close to this next fight. And now that waiting that I just did feels like a blip on the radar, especially because it all came to fruition, you know? So anybody who is going through a season like I just went through, eventually you'll get to that point and you'll look back and you'll say, man, I added so many layers to my human. I added so much to me, and I can stand on my own 2 feet right now, knowing that I made the decision that I want to make. You can say all you want and put me in a box and tell me what I should do, and everyone else can do it, but I made this decision. I am in charge of my life. I am running my race, and I'm going to focus on winning. So I take confidence from that, and I draw confidence from that. And yeah, I had so many conversations behind the scenes that nobody ever heard for me to have enough reassurance that this fight was going to happen.
I preface this question by saying I don't believe this, and he doesn't have a history of doing this ever. But I did see some people saying, I'm only going to believe it once I see them in the cage together. Is there any part of you that worries, that doubts that he doesn't show up?
Listen, man, I might have some doubts that he's training as hard as me. I might have some doubts that he is taking it as serious as me. But yes, exactly what you said. And you're an insider, man. You've studied the sport more than anybody else. And I'm a guy who doesn't have too big of an ego to give my opponent, the man who I want to dismantle, give him some props. He's had multiple opponents in the past pull out short notice. Diaz, which he lost, by the way. Aldo pulls out, he fights Chad Mendes. When he signs his name to the dotted line, yeah, he's going to throw some smoke and mirrors. Yeah, he's going to troll. He trolled you. He trolled me. He trolled everybody. He's a showman. He likes to be the puppet master, right? He likes to get the reactions. But when it comes down to Conor McGregor, the Mac is back, the greatest comeback in combat sports history that he has been talking about now for this long. It's on this date. He has signed the contract. The man will show up. It's going to be an act of God or a ridiculous, crazy set of circumstances for him not to show up. That's my personal opinion, and that's coming from the guy who's not supposed to be giving him props, right? Everybody loves to say, I'm a bootlicker. I want the red panty night. I want this and I want that. But if you look at my track record, man, I have no problem giving my opponents props. I have an immense amount of respect for anybody who lives this lifestyle, anybody who trains the way we do and makes the sacrifices that we make. And Conor is an exception Conor is exceptional when it comes to that. He's a man of his word. He's going to show up.
I actually think that's the right thing to do, is to give your opponents prop, because if you this is the example I always talk about. Like if you crap on your opponent and say he's lesser than and that he sucks and this and that, leading up to the fight, and then you either A, lose to that person, then what does it say about you? Or then B, beat that person and are crying and you're emotional because you just want to fight. Well, you just told us for 3 months that person sucks. Why do you care so much? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's the Tommy Fury, Jake Paul thing. Tommy Fury was telling us Jake Paul's a bum. Bum, 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 bum. And then he beats him and he's crying like he just won the biggest fight of his life. I was like, wait, I thought he was a bum. So this is the way you should promote someone. You build them up, because then when you beat them, it looks even greater. No one wants to think that you beat a bum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a smart promotional tactic, right? But it's also just the way that I operate. I mean, I think I've always wanted to go against the grain, right? I was wrestling in college and started watching mixed martial arts and watching how fights were being promoted and dudes trashing each other and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I get how you're supposed to sell a fight, right? But it doesn't feel authentic to me. I mean, yeah, I have my convictions. I have my beliefs. I have my vision for how fights are going to go down, how I'm going to beat a guy, where their deficiencies are. And I can have confidence without in the same breath trashing my opponent, right? I can have confidence, but also in the same breath speaking highly of my opponent, because also we're in the valley, we are in the muck, we are in the suck. All as long as we are doing these training camps and this lifestyle that we live in, and this sport itself, the grind, it will beat you down to your knees, right? So I have a ton of respect for anybody I'm stepping in the cage with. And then you're at the highest level, man. I have fought nothing but absolute killers since I came into the UFC. I'm making good on the promise when I looked Hunter Campbell in the eye and said, I want to come into the UFC. I want to fight the toughest guys right away. Either I am who I say I am or I'm not. I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. Everybody knows all the lines, right? And that was the truth. And it still is the truth. It hasn't been that long. It's been a little over 3 years, right? So, man, I got a ton of respect for him, but I can't wait to dismantle him.
Do you think he's training as hard as you?
Nobody trains as hard as me, man. No, so I mean, he's training. You know, he's sparring. He's putting the rounds in. He's putting the work in. Man, I truly believe, man. I mean, there's some pressure on me, right? I can't lose to the guy who's been out for 3 years, right? I can't lose to the guy who's been written off. I can't lose to the guy who gave up and he's sleeping on silk sheets and on his Lamborghini. Yeah, I can't lose to that guy, right? So there's a lot of pressure going on. And I do know and think training to fight the most motivated Conor that we have ever had. It's going to be hard to top Conor, the motivated Conor from 2016 and 2018 and all the fights that we all loved and all watched his meteoric rise and how he captured the hearts and minds of not just the mixed martial arts community, but the entire world. Now, coming back, trying to prove a point, trying to silence the doubters, but also prove your supporters correct. That's a dangerous man, you know, and when he gets the passion back and the bug back, it's a dangerous man. And he's well-versed in stepping into absolutely huge, massive stages. And 73 days from now, we find out who's the better man on that night.
The idea of retiring Conor, being his last opponent, is this motivation to you?
You know, kind of. You know, I mean, obviously, you're always thinking about, you know, the different outcomes. You're always thinking about what it means. You know, I've said and I've gone on record now saying everybody has to buy this pay-per-view because one of two things is going to happen. Conor either succeeds in coming back and it being the greatest comeback in combat sports history, and he gets a win, and he's back on the horse, he's back in the win column, and he's probably fighting a huge fight, whether it's the BMF belt, whether it's the lightweight title, whether it's the welterweight title, whether it's something, right? That's scenario one. But the most likely scenario is I go out there and absolutely dismantle him, and it might be the last time we ever see Conor fight, right? And I don't say that with ill will, saying, you know, I'm going to retire him, I'm going to put him in a body bag, and I'm going to bump all these different things. No, man. It's we'll see where he stacks up in the world of the high class fighters in this division, whether it be 155, 170. I'm a top ranked guy, ranked inside the top. I guess the new rankings came out. I kind of dipped a little bit now, top 7. So we'll see where he stacks up, and it could be the last time that we ever see him. So people have to buy the pay-per-view because it could be the last time that you see Conor. And you see me climb up to the next rung, and then there's bigger and brighter lights on me after this fight.
I understand if you can't answer this question, but I'll ask it anyway, and you do with it what you want to do with it. Last time we saw Chris Weidman, when he came back, I should say, after the injury, Brad Tavares attacked his leg, right? I mean, who wouldn't? It's fair game. Will you do the same?
Man, I'm not a big leg kicker. Yeah. Honestly, throwing leg kicks hurts me most of the time more than it hurts my opponent. Now, I do have a feather in my cap that I put Justin Gaethje in an ambulance via leg kicks, you know, the biggest leg kicker, which it's tough to talk about him right now because of what just happened. And God, I love freaking Justin Gaethje, one of the best to ever do it. But that was obviously an orthodox versus an orthodox matchup. This is going to be orthodox versus southpaw. His hurt leg, if you would, going after it, it's his back leg. So me focusing on anything other than just being me and focusing on my strengths, which is always punches and bunches, big punches, punches to the head, punches to the body, pick him up, put him down, type of in your face, foot on the gas, type of Michael Chandler style. It would be silly for me to think about anything more than that. You know, obviously it was Weidman's back leg and Tavares was beating up the front leg, which then, you know, anytime you can mess up a guy's foundation, it's good for you. It changes their movement, messes up the power in their punches. But I don't see myself throwing a lot of leg kicks in this fight. So haven't really thought about it that much.
What about wrestling?
Wrestling? What is that, dude?
Yeah.
No, man. Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, people always say, hey, you're going to use the wrestling. You're going to use, you know, you're going to use more grappling, more cage control. You know, obviously, the last fight with Poirier took him down, held him down the entire 5 minutes, stayed on top of him, beat him up a little bit, captured a wrist, suffocated him a little bit. And that felt good. The fight before that, taking down Ferguson, holding him down. If I get somebody down, they're not getting up. So I obviously know that is there. It has a lot to do with the style of the guy you're fighting. It has a lot to do with their movement, has a lot to do with where their weight is. Is it the weight on the front leg, weight on the back leg? How long are they? How much range do they have? How do they fight? Do they fight tall? Do they fight short? I like the idea of picking up Conor and putting him down. I also like the idea of making good on the promise of knocking him out in the second round with my hands. I think from the first exchange, Conor will second guess himself. I think I take the center of the octagon. I think I start sucking the oxygen out of the octagon. And by the end of the first round, he's going to know I probably should have found a different opponent, and then I finish him in the second, whether that be on the ground or on the feet. But I'd like to keep it on the feet.
Are you comfortable with the idea, because throughout your career you've been a fan favorite? I feel like the general sports fan, they're all going to want to see the great comeback, right? They're all going to be rooting for Conor just because of who he was. Are you comfortable with the idea of sort of being the villain here?
Villain? I mean, it's a feel-good story, man. That's why we love, you know, movies with the comeback story, right? People want to see a comeback, and people want to root for the underdog. You know, I'm the underdog on the betting lines, I guess, from what I've seen.
Is that true?
People want to see the guy. I think they're close, and people have talked about how I'm the underdog.
Okay.
Whatever, man. I've been the underdog in most of my fights, I think, at this point. You know, people want to see a comeback story. People love a comeback story. And honestly, even, you know, me thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, if you could write a script and this guy breaks his leg and he comes back and he's able to pull himself from the ashes, man, it's a good story, right? But, you know, it also is a good story. The guy who came from the little mean streets of High Ridge, Missouri, the small guy from the small town who everybody told him not to walk on to the University of Missouri. He does it anyway, becomes a 4-time starter, 4-time national qualifier and All-American, then gets into the sport, becomes a world champion, then comes into the sport of mixed martial arts. And all throughout the entire time, people said, you're not the right guy. You're not good enough. You should talk like this. You should walk like this. You should do your hair like this. You should cuss a little bit more. You should do this and you should do that. And the guy didn't listen. He kept his blinders on, and he makes it to the pinnacle of the sport. That's a great comeback story, too. That's a story that people can get behind for the everyday, average 40-hour work week, blue-collar people around the world. That's the story that people can get behind, too. So I won't say villain. I'm not going to try to be the villain. The villain doesn't really interest me. I'm sure I'll have my moments where people don't like what I say, but people will criticize things that they do not understand, and they will criticize things that they are intimidated by. And people are very intimidated by somebody who is confident in themselves, and they are authentic in themselves, and they can stand on their own 2 feet. And I am that man, so I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But it's going to be interesting, man. There's so many layers to this fight. And the buildup is going to be ridiculous. The storylines are aplenty, and we got 73 days to sell this thing and get the entire world watching.
First of all, tremendous promo, and your evolution as a promo artist, nothing short of amazing from when we first met. Second of all, I'm being told -110 even right now, so you guys, according to the odds makers, are neck and neck. I would love, by the way, to see a couple press conferences, like old school UFC leading up to this. It would be so much with your gift to gab and his aura, of course. Is there any talk of this at all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a big fight, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I would argue, and this is no disrespect to, you know, we want to break that Khabib number, right? The 2.4, and that was huge because of the animosity and the biggest Muslim athlete on the planet. I mean, it had all the makings of it doing that kind of number. But this one, Conor's comeback, one of the most violent guys in the sport. I mean, it's we got 73 days to build this thing. I know the UFC wants to build it. Man, I'm ready to go anywhere. I'm ready to go anywhere in this country. I'll fly to Ireland tomorrow. I will hop on a plane and fly to enemy territory tomorrow and get booed, get pints thrown at me, get everything thrown at me, man. And that's not because I want to be the villain or anything. I want to take this thing by the horns, man. I've enjoyed it. I'm excited about it. And yeah, there's some talks going on, and we're still 73 days out, so we still got a little bit of time, you know, 9-10 weeks or whatever it is. So there's going to be some stuff happening, and you know, with the UFC, the lead up is going to be a lot different than the announcement, which was a little tiny piece of paper. I think that's a little bit like oxymoron foreshadowing of how the next 73 days are going to go.
I'm glad. And so okay, so here we are, and I think that you can make a case. Tell me if you feel otherwise. A win over Conor McGregor at any point is just as big as becoming a champion. Do you feel like if it never happens for whatever reason, you becoming UFC champion, will this suffice? Will this scratch that itch? You be the guy that beat Conor McGregor in the comeback fight, all that stuff. Will this be the thing that you could tell your kids and grandkids about, or are they two separate things in your opinion?
Man, the competitor in me says, you know, you want to be the champion. I always said, even back when I got into the sport, when I was in Bellator, all those years, nobody watching, nobody covering my stuff. Even the big pay-per-views, Ariel Helwani doesn't go to. They send the second stringer, the third stringer, you know. And I remember all that stuff, dude. I got receipts, and I always wanted to become the #1 guy in the world. So the competitor in me says I want that. But yeah, when it comes to making people feel something, when it comes to doing something that the whole world is going to be watching, you get into the sport for a couple of different reasons. You want the biggest fights to fight the biggest guys under the brightest lights. It doesn't get any bigger than this. So yes, from the standpoint of, I mean, after this, where do you go up from this, right? You know, you got this huge fight coming up, and fighting for the UFC title is, as a competitor, that's what I want, but it doesn't get any bigger than this. So, man, the BMF belt, the lightweight belt, the welterweight belt, they're all in my sights right now when it comes to options. And but right now, I'm focused on this huge opportunity. But I want to wear gold before I retire.
Okay, fair enough.
Or silver, whatever that BMF belt is. Is that silver, platinum, whatever?
Something like that. Just a couple more, and I'll let you go. We just found out that Dustin, on that same piece of paper, was Dustin fighting Islam, we found out. Do you think he has a chance?
Everyone's got a chance. But I think Islam's good, man. Once again, this is me giving a ton of respect to a guy that I want to fight. Islam is very good. Southpaw versus Southpaw, one guy who's much better at wrestling. At this point, the ease at which Dustin gets taken down is a scary thing for him. I don't know how you spend the next, it's not even 8 weeks, right?
It's like a month.
It's about 8 weeks, 7 weeks. You know, I don't know how you spend that much. I don't know how you can make up the ground to be able to stop some of the takedowns that you know Islam is going to throw at him. But Dustin hits very hard. Dustin has the heart of a champion. Dustin is, I would say, the most skilled guy I have fought ever in my entire life, from a standpoint of huge heart, great cardio. His mind is with it when he's in the octagon. He will play possum just like he did with me. He will lose round. He will concede position. He'll do all of these different things to win the fight. He's a certified competitor. With that being said, I think Islam is better than him in every single aspect of the sport except for the sheer boxing. So it'll be fun. It'll be entertaining. I will not be there, but I'll be watching.
Can Armin?
And I would love to fight the winner. Armin just went out there, beat Oliveira. Obviously, he sounds like he's going to be #1 contender next. I also don't understand why he didn't take that fight. I would have taken it.
Even though it's a short turnaround.
Man, you don't get crazy. This sport moves fast.
Yeah.
The sport moves very fast. And June 1st, you're going to see the lightweight title happen. And then a couple of weeks later, you're going to see the biggest fight, a fight that's way bigger than that, happen. And both of those guys can make lightweight. So the sport moves fast. So you got to take your opportunities. You got to pounce on them.
That's a very good point. Do you think Arman could
coming from the guy who just waited 15 months? So I get people like, oh yeah, Chandler, yeah, you really are pouncing on opportunities. Once again, I never got asked for any opportunities over the last 15 months.
Yes, we established that. Can Arman beat Islam in your opinion?
Man, I mean, when it comes just to straight, I mean, obviously he knocked out Beneil. He's good on the ground, man. You saw it in the Oliveira fight. He's strong on the ground, very strong base. He's a strong guy. I still think, I mean, Islam's got a lot of guys' numbers, man. He's got a big calling on his life, and he believes it. And he is not fighting just for himself. He is fighting for the entire country. He's fighting for Khabib's legacy. He's fighting for Khabib's dad's legacy. It's a lot deeper, and it's special. It's good. It's intimidating to a lot of people, and. But no, I think Islam retains against Poirier. I think he retains against Arman. And I think, I guess that would have to be first quarter of next year I would fight him.
Okay. Two last quick things. June 1st, they're debuting the new gloves. It was announced last week. So that means you'll be fighting with the new gloves. Have you tried the new gloves? And if not, I would imagine you'd like to wear them beforehand. So, like, are there any talks of sending them to you so that you can train in them?
I just trained in them this morning.
I should have known better.
I did.
I should have known.
They're over there in my bag. Yo, I got
Can I see them? Can I see them? Are they different?
Come on, dude. Hold on.
Okay. Wow, this is fun. Okay, so he's tried them. It's going to debut for UFC 302. That's the... Okay, here they are. Are they dramatically different? Thanks for doing that, by the way. Thank you.
Of course. Now, is there black, gray, or is this the color? I don't know if the color... Just to me, they're more of a gray, right?
Oh.
But... You can tell there is a curve here. So it does to me two things why I think eye pokes are going to be less and less. There is a curve, but then there also is this piece right here that doesn't let your wrist do this as much.
Okay.
So the less you can do that, the more you're going to be going up and kind of flicking people in the eyes. I will say they're nice they feel like a memory foam more than they do just a hard piece of
yeah.
You can kind of do this and you can kind of feel it kind of recover a lot slower. The wrist is a little bit interesting or different, I would say. The Velcro is really nice. It doesn't seem like it's going to, like you almost can't scratch anybody. So that's nice, but they're great. I mean, I trained in them this morning. We did grappling and some striking stuff. And, you can kind of tell they do this and then they kind of slowly recover.
How does that work, by the way? They reached out to you and said, we want to send them to you. Did you ask for them? How does that work?
Yeah, they reached out and sent them to me.
It's good to be the king.
I was like a celebrity at the gym. Everybody's like, is that the brand new ones? I'm like, yeah, come on, check them out.
Were you the only one?
So cool, man.
Were you the only one that had them?
I'm the only one on the planet that has these. Can you believe it? Yeah. No, I'm just joking. I'm not. I'm sure they sent them to other guys that I bet Poirier and Islam got them. I mean, these are the ones we're gonna fight with for 302, 301, 303, whatever it is. I think I'm gonna have to go up a size. I normally wear a medium, but we'll see. So, but they were good. I like them.
All right.
Your new gloves.
You were there on Saturday. What was your experience with the Max fight? Like, I've seen so many videos, people, how are you reacting? Who are you next to? What are you thinking? Take us inside your brain.
Man, honestly, and you can see it because social media kind of went through and got reaction videos, everybody's doing this number and this number, and I'm just kind of like doing this. I was literally praying for Justin Gaethje.
Okay.
It was just, it happened. And I watched the way his body fell. I was like, dear God, please let this man get up. Justin Gaethje, I'm a fan of him, dude. I love him. I think he's freaking awesome. Obviously, he beat me. So I feel, people are like, that's weird that but you can have respect. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's every single thing about him, the way he operates. So I was just, yeah, I was like, man, this is one of those times where a guy who's been in some crazy wars, taken a lot of damage, just get up, man, you know? And then obviously he did. So that reaction, and then, you know, not surprised by Max's performance. Max is really, really good. Max didn't look like he got touched, you know, which is crazy. I think Max did such a good job of in and out and negotiating and navigating the range to where Justin was not able to get in. Almost he took away Justin's technique. You know, Justin was kind of throwing like weird overhand rights and weird hooks, you know, because of the way Max was navigating and negotiating the distance and going to the body, going to the head, pot shotting, throwing kicks. He threw that spinning back kick like 5 or 6 times, one which, you know, landed and broke his nose. And you saw that from the first round. And obviously that's reminiscent of my last fight. I got my nose broken in the first round and immediately you can't breathe. And he had to spend the next 20 something minutes breathing through his mouth. And, you know, it was crazy. He got sucked into the point to the center of the octagon type of thing, and ton of respect for Max. Love Gaethje. Hopefully he's, you know, takes a little bit of time off and heals up and gets a great fight. Because I said this, I might have said it on your show last time I was on, man. I wanted to see Justin Gaethje fight for the title. He had a ton to lose fighting on Saturday.
Yeah.
And, you know, because if he loses that fight, now he's not in title contention anymore. Now Arman's going to sneak in there. Or Poirier's got it after beating the number 12 guy, which is an interesting to say the least. But yeah, man, it was crazy.
And sorry, one last very quick one, because I'm just looking at your backdrop there. You're not at home. You have 2 young kids. That's a crazy life, right? When you have 2 young kids, home is a bit chaotic. You're one of the few guys who are at the very top now who leaves his family. You go train in Florida. Do you find yourself going crazy there? The silence, the solitude. You'll be there for probably 2 or so months, right? And I know maybe you'll visit with your family and whatnot. But like, now that we're done, like, is that tough? Is that like jail? How would you describe this?
You know, it's like you're doing. I mean, you go back and forth because you know you miss them. You know your sons deserve for their dad to be there. You know the promise you made to your wife to be there for her. But you also know that you're doing what God has called you to do. And when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it does make it a little bit easier. And it really is for a short window of opportunity. You know, I just spent the last 15 months in MMA purgatory, and now all of a sudden, boom, it felt like a blip on the radar. And these training camps, they do get long at times. I'm beat up. I'm tired. I'm going through it. And I got to pull myself back up every single day and go and be disciplined and do everything right. And it's very me focused. And when I do go home and see my family, I'm not the dad that they, you know, are used to, because I'm still focused. I'm still in fight mode. Right. And maybe I'm too hard on myself, but so it's I enjoy it from a standpoint of this is what we have to do, right? And for many years, we waffled on, you know, them coming down here at all times so I can do my training camps. But I made a decision that I'm going to fly home and see them a lot. And if my performance suffers, so be it. I will be a dad for the rest of my life. I'm only going to be a fighter for a couple more years. So it's more important to me to be a dad and to be a husband. So I fly home and see them often, pretty much every single week. So I get my time with them, and they know daddy's got to work. You know, my son Hap knows, especially because I've talked to him about it 1,000 times. He knows every man has to work. And someday, through osmosis, through his subconscious, him seeing the way that I operate, him seeing how the sacrifices that I make, the discipline that I have, he will be a ridiculously upstanding citizen and a positive contributor to this earth because of the blueprint and the masterpiece that I'm trying to paint for my 2 boys. So I rest in that. And it's hard at times, shed some tears at times, get homesick at times, of course, but it's part of it. And this is my calling. And shoot, man, we're only 73 days away. So it'll be over before we know it. So I'm really trying to just soak it all in.
Much respect, my man. So happy this all finally came to fruition. Good luck in training. Thank you, as always, for the time. It's always a privilege to talk to you, and especially at this moment, who would have thought from all those years ago, you're about to fight Conor freaking McGregor in the main event of International Fight Week 2024. Pretty freaking amazing. So well done. Good luck. Congrats on it finally happening. And then, of course, can't wait for June 29th.
Yes, sir. You're the man, dude. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll see you.
Yes, there he is. Michael Chandler. We'll see him at International Fight Week. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You could get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.